Hello, my name is John Rose, and in this video I'd like to take a closer look at the alchemical phrase, as above, so below. And I'd like to compare that to, or relate it to, going from the third stage to the fourth stage of spirituality. And I've gone over the four stages of spirituality according to M. Scott Peck in a video I did. I'll put a link down below in the description box. Raw food stages of spirituality. The third stage is the skeptical stage, and the fourth stage, when we go from third to the fourth, we start, this is of course if we pay attention, we will, if we start noticing that there's more similarities in things than there are differences. And that's when we start realizing that yes, all is one. And this works to the macro and to the micro. You can't help but see the similarities. For example, look at our vascular system and the vascular system of a tree or plants. How many of y'all have noticed the similarities? It's identical, isn't it? And how about the vascular system of the planet, if I can call it that? The rivers and tributaries. They look like our arteries and veins and capillaries, don't they? If you've ever seen a map or up above real high, you see the similarities. We're all one, and everything is always has this commonality amongst everything. And the way I think of this is the way bubbles coalesce. That's sort of how I think of consciousness coalescing. And what I mean by that, to illustrate that, let's say, is if you were to take a cell out of our body and put it into a petri dish, it would become a whole different cell, because now it's not inside of you, where you are sort of like its consciousness. When the cell's inside you, it knows it's inside a living system. It's a whole different environment it has to interact with. Take it out of that environment, put it in a different environment, it changes. It's a whole different cell. And then what happens when we take that cell and put it back in the body? It goes, okay, I'm inside John again. So the consciousness of that cell coalesces into me. Everything coalesces up to the next level. And remember, when we look at the powers of 10, it goes really far micro, all the way down to the quarks, and pretty far macro, as far as we can go, about 100 billion light years, or 100 light years, 100 billion galaxies worth of universe. So everything coalesces from one level to the next. So what do we have? A cell inside me, and then there's me, and then there's the planet. Now, to illustrate how similar everything is, if we were to take a tree, if I could come over here and grab one of these trees and yank it up and shake all the leaves and dirt off the branches and the roots, and held that up to one of our brain cells, you couldn't tell the difference. They look identical. As above, so below. Everything, the creation, there's similarities, there's connectedness. Everything's doing the same thing. And from that perspective, you can't help but think of then the earth being like a cell, right? And it has its own consciousness, and then the trees are the brain cells to that planet, in addition to the living organisms like ourselves that have our own little brains. So consciousness always coalesces. So now we have the earth as a consciousness, and then we have a solar system as a consciousness. Again, everything coalesces up to the next level. Now we have a galaxy as a consciousness. Now we have a universe as a consciousness. And everything in our universe at one time could fit in something the size of a little bitty green pea. That wasn't a couple years ago when scientists finally came out and said that. For the longest time, we said it could fit on the tip of the needle. Now this is formless energy, 0-point energy. And what happened is this energy went into space. And it became formed energy, or tachyon energy. Now why did that happen? It's simple. It wanted to go play in space. So that's what we're doing right now. We're playing in space. We're all little bitty specks of the little green pea experiencing itself, and it's supposed to be a good, positive experience. We're not supposed to be suffering. We don't have a God that's torturing us. Why does God let good things happen to people? Why did that little girl get cancer? How could God let that happen? This is part of our feedback. Disease is part of our feedback system. We're not being punished. God loved us so much, he gave us a feedback system so we'd know when we're messing up. The problem is we messed up a long time ago and we can't correct the mistake. And we're all one, whether we go to the macro or the micro, 10 to the 40th or 44, whatever. Now, does God exist? What is God? In order to answer that question, you really have to know a better definition, or we have to at least be on the same page, right? Because a lot of people have different definitions of what they think God is. I sort of liked Einstein's answer, if this was really his answer. I think he had a think tank behind him to make him look smart. But anyway, he was asked one time if he believed in God, and this was early on. Of course, he changed his mind, or his tone a little bit toward the end of his life, getting closer to the end. But initially he goes, I believe in Spinoza's God. And Spinoza was a pantheist. And I remember when I first heard that word in my early 20s, I was trying to explain to someone my belief about how everything coalesces and we're all one and everything like that. And that to me, God isn't outside of me, we're all part of God. And that's when I was told, well, that's what pantheism means. That God and the universe are the same thing. There's no separateness. We're all one. We're all little bitty specks of the green pea. Now the question is, how many of those darn little green peas are there? And how many gardens are there to throw those green peas into? Interesting thoughts, isn't it? And then, what is God? Is God the creator of the green pea? Or is God the green pea? Or is there only one green pea? The question, does God exist, I think could be answered by just about any young kid, 6 or 7 years old, when they ask the obvious question, well, if God created all this, then who created God? And how many times can we go around with that? I'm not afraid to admit I really don't know. I know there is a consciousness above everything, just like my cell has me. And don't start saying that's New Age, because I came up with this, my own thinking without being influenced by anybody. It's just my common sense. You know, on one end we have common sense, and on the other we have conventional wisdom. Conventional wisdom is all the bullshit our brains have been bombarded with so that everybody believes the same bullshit. And there's no thinking involved, it's just the only references they have. So, does God exist? Well, to me it's obvious as heck that there's always a consciousness that always coalesces. Everything coalesces up to one major consciousness. Is it outside of us? That doesn't make any sense to me. But then, that's in a realm that I'm willing to admit I don't know anything about. It's beyond any one of us, and I think it's a little arrogant for anybody to think, I've got the answer. I'm a Vedic creationist and I know exactly what happened. Indeed, these are mysteries that I don't know how anyone's ever going to try to figure out. I have a lot of close friends that swear they have a relationship to God, and you know, they speak in tongues, and you know, there's a lot of ways. I try to explain to him, well, you're opening up your chakras, and to this day he still doesn't even want to entertain that idea. He goes, no, this is, you know, my relationship with God. And there's so many things in this life we don't understand. The last thing we want to do is bicker over this. I always like what Gandhi said. There are many ways to God, many religions to God. They're all the same. And if you do look at all the religions, they're all trying to accomplish the same thing. Remember, the root word for religion is religio. It means to connect. And the whole concept behind spirituality is to understand that we're all one. But the problem is that those two are subsequent needs because we're disconnected. And they provide a lot of support for us. That's why they're a subsequent need for a lot of people. But the problem is that all of our needs can be used against us. And that's what's happening with those. So when I speak of spiritual mumbo jumbo, I'm not poo-pooing any spirituality whatsoever. I know it's a subsequent need, and I know that since the rest of you guys aren't connected, even if we get connected, we still need to embrace what we don't have. We don't have a community like we should. I identified that as a piece number on my schematic. It's one of our needs, and I called it community in lieu of spirituality, because I didn't want to offend people who didn't believe in God. And it's interesting how people who usually are in stage 3, who are skeptics, use as their argument, in a way, what would be a straw man to people in stage 4 when they criticize people in stage 2. Saying, well, your argument's flawed because But you can't use that to people in stage 4. Because we're not saying what they're saying. To us, it's a straw man. Hey, I'm not saying that. Those people down there below you are saying it. Anyway, mysteries of life. What is the meaning of life? I did a video on the meaning of life, and I'll put a link down below. There's only one meaning in life. It's to get out of the cave of ignorance we're in. It's to get back up in paradise and play. Remember, the reason why that little green pea went into space is to go play. We're supposed to be playing in paradise. And all that is a place where we don't have problems that are within our control. Most of our problems are within our control. So what we want to do is take responsibility and be the best that we can be. And it starts with a solid food vacation. Go down below and go to a seminar that I went to that explains how to do a solid food vacation. And this is going to be part 1 of a video series. Part 2 will be a couple films that show the powers of 10. And I think you're going to really enjoy those. It goes from the macro to the micro, and it shows as above, so below. So it gives you a good overall big picture of how we can go to a point where we don't know we can't go any further. We go to a point we don't know any further this way either. So it's infinite both ways. So when you meditate and you're off in space, are you really going that way, macro, or did you go down that way, micro? Hey, I'm in space. Look, it keeps getting deeper and deeper. Anyway, watch part 2 of these. You're going to really enjoy these. And remember, there's nothing more exciting than being healthy and helping other people. Why? Because it's truly a treat.